Alrighty, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Good morning and welcome to our workshop on Drive Forward Medium and Heavy Duty Incentives and the Air Quality Improvement Program, or AQIP funding plan. Before we begin, I wanted to let folks know that this workshop is being recorded and the subsequent recording should be posted online in about a week or so. I'll also mention that the slides used for today's presentation are currently posted on our low carbon transportation meetings and workshops webpage if you'd like to access our slides. So I'm Evan Powers. I'm a staff air pollution specialist here at CARB, or the California Air Resources Board. I work on our medium and heavy duty incentive programs. I'm also joined by a host of other CARB staff and management who work on the various incentive programs here. And they'll introduce themselves when they begin speaking. So we've got a lot of folks behind the scenes here as well. Before we get started, I wanted to provide an outline of today's workshop. I'll start by providing some introductory information and some background on CARB's Drive Forward initiatives with respect to incentives, along with a brief recap of the workshop we conducted back in November. I'll then pass it off to my colleague Amrit Sandhu, who will discuss the governor's proposed budget for the medium and heavy duty incentive projects for fiscal year 26-27, as well as the budget from last year, and staff's initial proposal for that cumulative funding, which will be outlined in the proposed AQIP funding plan. Keep in mind the times listed on the slide are rough approximations, and we certainly won't be held to those times. We'll stop throughout the presentation so folks can ask questions and provide comments and suggestions, provide feedback. And though the slide says we're ending at 1, we've got plenty of time. I think we can even go a little past 1 if needed. So plenty of time to provide comments and feedback. So this is the second workshop specific to medium and heavy duty incentive projects for CARB's Drive Forward Incentives Initiative. To kick it off, I wanted to talk a little bit about the rapidly changing landscape at the federal level and how CARB's responding. You may recognize some of the slides, but we do want to make sure we're all on the same page before we transition into what most of you are probably here for, the funding plan discussion. So the federal government has made some illegal and unconstitutional moves. These are making it harder for California to reduce air pollution and weaken CARB's ability to protect public health. Additionally, changes in federal priorities and budget cuts are making it more challenging for vehicle manufacturers to invest in clean technology. One of the more notable challenges is the loss of federal tax credits for zero-emission vehicles. This makes it harder for folks to afford clean cars and trucks and slows down progress. But we can't afford to slow down. Transportation causes 60% of the state's smog-forming pollution and 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to keep cutting emissions to meet our quality standards, fight climate change, and protect our communities. Last year, more than 17 million Californians breathed unhealthy air, which contributes to a number of cardiac and respiratory diseases. That's why we need to keep pushing forward to reach our clean, to reach our clean air and zero emission goals. We need to keep working together hand in hand to drive progress forward. In response to these illegal actions by the federal government, Governor Newsom signed Executive Order N2725. This order shows California's strong commitment to clean air and zero emission vehicles, especially in communities hit hardest by pollution. The order directs CARB to create a new regulation that cuts down on greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants from vehicles. It also directs the state to buy vehicles from companies that support California's clean air goals and to look at more ways to help people adopt zero-emission vehicles. To support this, CARB and other state agencies launched the ZEB Forward initiative. This process gave the public a chance to share ideas on how to keep California moving forward toward clean transportation. People spoke up about what matters most, which was making clean vehicles more affordable, reliable, and easy to access. These ideas were included in a report to the governor last August. Now, CARB is building upon that work with an effort called Drive Forward. The Drive Forward initiative will help shape clean vehicle rules, incentives, and outreach and education to get more zero-emission cars and trucks and buses on California's roads. To keep moving forward, CARB is working on a fast timeline to create new rules for clean cars and trucks through 2026 and beyond. We started this effort with a workshop on October 21st of last year that focused on light-duty vehicle standards to kick off our 2027 rulemaking. We then held a Drive Forward incentives workshop back in November to present and gather feedback on what we saw as projected funding needs for our programs, or for our vehicle and equipment incentive programs over the next several years. Then in December, we held a workshop to discuss heavy-duty vehicle standards and strategies. And then just yesterday, our light-duty incentives team, conducted a second Drive Forward incentives workshop to talk about our light-duty incentive programs. Today's workshop is a continuation of yesterday's and will focus on CARB's medium and heavy-duty vehicle and equipment incentive programs and the AQIP funding plan that we plan to bring to the board in June. We were tight on time back in the November workshop, so we split these into 2 days to allow for plenty of time for attendee comments, questions, and feedback. And as the slide suggests, we plan on continuing the Drive Forward effort by ongoing development of vehicle standards and incentive policy through 2026 and beyond. So as I mentioned, we held that Drive Forward incentives workshop back in November. Before we get to the funding plan discussion, we wanted to provide just a brief recap of this medium and heavy duty incentive portion for that November workshop, just to get us all on the same page. We titled that session Clean Trucks, Buses, and Off-Road Equipment and Emerging Technologies. But we generally refer to these projects as our medium and heavy duty incentive programs. So that's how we're going to be referring to them today. So the purpose of this workshop back in November, at least the heavy duty session, was to present progress and cumulative benefits of these programs to date, present and gather feedback on what we saw as projected funding needs in these programs, and gather input through a series of questions. Now, these questions were designed to touch on several topics, whether our projected funding needs were reflective of the market, specific technologies we should be focusing on, additional funding streams that we could potentially leverage, as well as ways the private sector could potentially help support these efforts. Generally, the attendees, whether representing environmental groups, manufacturers, community organizations, etc., pretty much all agreed that there is an immense funding need in our heavy-duty programs. This is due to high demand, obviously, and the need to continue deploying these cleaner technologies. Attendees also provided many ideas on where the available funding should be focused. Now, these ideas included zero-emission off-road technologies, pre-commercial advanced technology deployment, and high-impact corridors such as ports, densely populated freight routes, etc. Another key takeaway was that consistent funding streams are needed. Attendees provided several ideas we should look into, including container fees, weight permits, utilizing CARB enforcement fees. And then not included on the slide, but worth mentioning again, is that folks also thought it would be helpful to conduct several separate workshops for light duty and heavy duty incentives, which again, we've implemented in yesterday's and today's workshop and will likely follow suit in the future, just in an effort to provide more time. I know we were kind of under, a time constraint in the November workshop, so we're, hopefully mitigating that by separating the two. And then as far as next steps on the Drive Forward medium and heavy duty incentives process, we'll be using feedback from this workshop series to help inform the development of the proposed AQIP funding plan. This funding plan will cover, and Amrit will get into this in a bit, but the funding plan will cover the fiscal year 25-26 funding, as well as the proposed 26-27 AQIP funding. And again, we'll be discussing that in a bit. Additionally, once this plan's approved by our board in June, we'll be implementing the plan and make any necessary program changes from there. We'll also be continuing to evaluate opportunities to refine our incentive programs as the Drive Forward initiative progresses. Of course, we'll continue to engage in the public, or with the public rather, as we implement and refine our incentive programs. It goes without saying that the feedback provided in workshops like this is extremely valuable for us as CARB staff to help determine where the needs are and how to best serve the people of California. And then before we transition into talking about the funding plan, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions, comments, feedback, anything on any of the background info that I've just covered. And with that, I'll pass it off to Peter to moderate the Q&A. But again, I did want to reiterate that any questions and comments to this point, let's focus on the background. Anything funding plan related, let's defer to after Amrit goes over her portion of the presentation. And with that, I can pass it off to Peter.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan. All right, so we'll now open up the floor to questions and comments about this part of the presentation. To ask a question or make a comment, please select the raise hand button on Zoom under the participants tab for desktop. For people that are joining us via Zoom on mobile devices, tap the raise hand in the More tab to raise it. By phone, press #2 to raise your hand. Once your line is open, state your name and affiliation before speaking. You can also email questions to the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov email, and our email moderator will notify us of your questions and we'll post the email address in the chat. Alrighty, so let's get started. Is there any questions? I'll wait to see if we have any hands raised on this portion of the presentation.
And I'll just add, I know as folks are kind of chiming in and still even joining, that there's plenty of time. So if a question on the background comes to you after this portion of the comment period, there's plenty of time to address those as well. So.
Awesome. Still monitoring. Any questions on the intro? What's been done so far?
Any questions over email or?
Yeah.
No questions in the email yet.
Okay.
Okay, well, not seeing any questions. And again, if they come to you later, we can address them as they come in. But I think thank you, Peter. I think we're safe to go ahead and pass it off to Amrit to continue the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Peter. Hope everyone can hear me okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amrit Sandhu, and I'm an air pollution specialist in the Innovative Heavy Duty Incentives branch. And I'll continue the remaining of the presentation, which is going to focus on the fiscal year 25-26 and the fiscal year 26-27 AQIP funding plan. So let's start with a little bit of background. The funding plan is an annual detailed guide of funds appropriated to it by legislature through the California state budget each year, and how CARB will allocate or assign any eligible appropriated funds. Through the plan, CARB staff aims to meet CARB and California state goals to improve air quality and reduce the impacts of climate change, consistent with legislative direction and law for each source of funding. CARB also aims to meet community and business needs. Where any funding appropriations allow for CARB to allocate funds to different incentive projects, that's where we collaborate with you and other interested parties on how those funds should be split up, with a strong emphasis on directing benefits to priority populations. The plan is a way for us to refine and improve how the projects work. I also want to add and make clear that while what you see in this graphic is our typical process, we had to rethink our approach for the funding plan to develop a more strategic plan that reflected the changing landscape. So instead of bringing the funding plan to the board in November, we held a Drive Forward incentives workshop to reorient ourselves and gather feedback on the best path forward in light of the federal actions. And since we didn't go to the board in November, we plan to present staff recommendations for both fiscal year 26, for fiscal year 25-26 AQIP funds and fiscal year 26-27 AQIP funds to the board in June. This slide shows the funding appropriated to CARB from fiscal year 2009 to 2010 through fiscal year 2024 to 25 via the Low Carbon Transportation Funding Plan process. The pie chart shows the largest portion of funds that have come from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, shown on the left of the slide at $3.7 billion, followed by the State General Fund in the top right at $1.5 billion. Other smaller pots of funding include the Air Quality Improvement Fund, the Proposition 98 Fund for Zero Emission School Buses, and various one-time funding sources. CARB was appropriated a total of $6.2 billion during this time frame. Next, we'll talk about funding for priority populations. Over the past decade, funds allocated to a variety of incentive projects in our portfolio have benefited from priority populations have increased overall, shown on this slide. Priority populations include residents of disadvantaged communities, low-income households, and low-income communities. Our incentive projects started off with the aim to get zero-emission vehicles and equipment into the mainstream. In fiscal year 2013-2014, greenhouse gas reduction funds became available, and CARB was directed to tailor incentive projects towards people who live in priority populations. As projects matured and more projects launched, we, along with our partners, began to increase the percentage of funds benefiting priority populations. In fiscal year 21-22, 53% of funds benefited priority populations, and for the past 2 fiscal years, about 60% of funds benefited priority populations. On this slide, we have a quick overview of our medium and heavy-duty on- and off-road equipment investments. The medium and heavy-duty programs strive to improve air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, continue to build on efforts to ensure investments support our equity goals, strategically focus on priority populations by expanding support for small businesses, public agencies, and disadvantaged communities, focus on reducing barriers for small fleets through financial and non-financial mechanisms, and collaborate with community partners, air districts, and other state and local agencies. The medium and heavy-duty incentive projects have typically focused on bringing cleaner technologies to the heavy-duty sector and supporting states' air quality and climate change goals. All these projects work together. Shift demonstration and pilot projects advance technology and prepare early markets. Voucher incentive reduce the purchase price of commercial options. Truck loans help under-resourced businesses acquire clean technologies, and support services like Cal Fleet Advisor help fleets deploy successfully. All the projects you see here include support for small fleet and businesses, with the zero-emission truck loan pilot and ISEF designed specifically to help meet their needs. And now I'll give a brief summary and status update for each of these heavy-duty programs. Starting off with HVIP. It's a first-come, first-served voucher program that helps reduce the upfront costs of clean trucks and buses. Instead of requiring a lengthy grant process, the incentive is applied directly at the point of sale through participating dealers, making it faster and easier for fleets to access funding. It plays an important role in supporting the broader regulatory programs at CARB, helping fleets transition to cleaner technologies that align with the state's long-term emission reduction goals. Especially with the EPA waivers being revoked, our incentive programs play a big role in stepping in to provide financial support and continue meeting long-term emission reduction goals and compliance. The program is designed to accelerate market transformation by helping early adopters purchase the cleanest available technologies, particularly zero-emission vehicles. The program provides additional incentives for fleets operating in disadvantaged and low-income communities, helping direct clean transportation benefits to areas most impacted by air pollution. And unlike some of our other incentive programs, HVIP does not require scrapping an existing vehicle, and this allows fleets to adopt cleaner vehicles more quickly without needing to retire a specific truck or bus. To date, over 11,000 vehicles have been deployed using approximately $1.6 billion in funding to support clean truck and bus deployments through HVIP. All right, next we have the Innovative Small E-Fleets Pilot Project, which is ISEF for short. It is a set-aside within the HVIP program designed to support small fleets and individual owner operators in accessing zero-emission vehicles through innovative solutions such as all-inclusive leases, truck-as-a-service agreement, short-term rentals, and other creative support mechanisms. By bundling services such as maintenance, insurance assistance, and fleet management in these models, the program will help reduce the total cost of ownership and the operational complexity that can come with adopting new vehicle technologies. A used vehicle voucher program could help lower vehicle costs, expand supply, and provide CARB with insights to guide future policies. Consumer protection will be prioritized by implementing oversight of vehicle pricing and establishing minimum standards for warranties and certifications. And to date, approximately $95 million have been allocated and 275 vehicles have been deployed. Next, we have the Zero Emission School Bus and Infrastructure Program, or ZESB, which focuses on replacing older diesel or gasoline school buses with zero-emission school buses. The goal is to reduce emissions from vehicles that operate daily around children and communities, improving air quality while supporting the transition to zero-emission transportation. One of the key features of this program is that it funds both the zero-emission bus and required charging infrastructure through a single application. This helps simplify the process for school districts and ensures that charging equipment is installed alongside the buses. The program prioritizes funding for small and rural school districts, as well as underserved or disadvantaged communities. Unlike some other clean vehicle programs, ZESB requires scrappage of the older internal combustion bus being replaced. This ensures that the highest polluting vehicles are permanently removed from service. To date, this program has been allocated approximately $500 million of funding and deployed over 1,000 school buses with associated infrastructure across California. Next, we have the Zero Emission Truck Loan Pilot Program, which is designed to help small fleets overcome one of the biggest barriers to adopting zero-emission trucks, which is access to affordable financing. Many small operators don't have the same capital resources as large fleets, so this program helps make zero-emission vehicle purchases more financially feasible. Rather than providing direct rebates for vehicles, the program works by supporting lenders through a loan loss reserve. This reduces the financial risk for lenders and encourages them to offer loans for zero-emission trucks to small fleets that might otherwise have difficulty securing financing. So far, the pilot has allocated a total of $10 million to support financing activities. Of that amount, about $1.9 million have been implemented and supported finance for 26 zero-emission vehicles. Next, we have the Sustainable Heavy-Duty Initiatives for Future Technology, or SHIFT, which was established in 2009. The goal of this program is to accelerate the adoption of pre-commercial technologies into the marketplace and to support commercialized technologies that would benefit from at-scale pilot projects to showcase technical feasibility and economic viability. Historically, SHIFT has covered zero-emission on-road vehicles, buses, off-road equipment, commercial hovercraft, locomotives, and many other. Currently, we're in the stage of implementing 12 new projects from funding allocated from the $225 million fiscal year 21-22 and fiscal year 22-23 Advanced Technology Demonstration and Pilot Project joint solicitation with the California Energy Commission. The solicitation supported a wide array of zero-emission projects. The tranche of new projects include marine vessels, off-road equipment, in addition to green zones projects. And a green zone project is a municipal or city-led initiative that deploys zero-emission vehicles, equipment, and infrastructure in creative ways and produces a shareable plan to help other municipalities transition away from combustion technologies. And in 2023, CARB also onboarded a third-party administrator, EPRI, which stands for Electric Power Research Institute, who is facilitating administrative activities to support the CARB project liaisons and grantees with implementation of these projects. Next, I'll cover CORE, which is the Clean Off-Road Equipment Program. It's also a first-come, first-served point-of-scale voucher incentive program. It's designed to accelerate the deployment of zero-emission off-road equipment by reducing upfront costs for purchasers. CORE supports a wide variety of equipment types across sectors like freight, construction, agriculture, cargo handling, and airport ground support equipment. The program is technology neutral within categories and seeks to support commercial-ready, zero-emission solutions that help California meet its clean air and climate goals. To date, approximately $538 million in funding has been allocated to support off-road equipment, and over 2,300 zero-emission equipment have been deployed to over 700 participants. Now I'd like to transition into funding. So there's basically two pots of funding we're discussing today. The first is the $35 million appropriated in last year's budget for the Air Quality Improvement Program, or AQIP. And this funding is included in the signed Budget Act for fiscal year 25-26, so it's ready to implement. The second pot we're discussing is the $35 million that was included in the governor's January budget proposal for fiscal year 26-27 AQIP funds. This funding is not final until the Budget Act is signed by the governor. However, since AQIP does have its own revenue source, CARB typically receives about $35 million each year. For now, we're including this in our proposed funding plan, but this may need to adjust if there's any changes. CARB just won't be able to implement this fiscal year 26-27 AQIP appropriation until the Budget Act is signed by the governor. And this brings our total amount covered in this AQIP funding plan being discussed today to about $70 million. All right, so with the $70 million AQIP dollars that are subject to CARB discretion, we need to make some tough choices and strategize our approach in order to achieve the greatest impact with the funding that's available. To shape our initial proposal, we used feedback and identified priorities during the Drive Forward workshop in November. But given the limited funding, we had to be strategic and focus on our recommendation where it would be most effective. And then in the next slide, we'll discuss the funding allocation in detail. This is our draft proposed AQIP allocation with $68 million going to CORE. During the November Drive Forward workshop and in stakeholder discussions that followed, zero-emission off-road equipment emerged as a consistent priority. And CORE is one of the best programs to help support ZEVs and the continued momentum in off-road categories. And allocating $68 million could generate meaningful progress in transitioning to zero-emission technology. CORE is also one of the most cost-effective LCT heavy-duty programs, and given the need for additional emission reductions as a result of federal waiver withdrawals, directing funds to programs that deliver emission reductions is important. CARB recognizes that these off-road zero-emission equipment categories play a critical role in advancing the electrification of the off-road sector. And given the limited funding available, CARB must be strategic. Spreading funds across multiple programs would dilute their effectiveness. So our goal is to focus on investments where they can deliver the greatest impact. I also want to add that several other heavy-duty programs have access to funding from additional sources like GGRF and APCF, which is the Air Pollution Control Fund, in recent years, whereas CARB has not received, since CORE has not received funding since the fiscal year 24-25 cycle. Additionally, the demand in CORE remains extremely high. In fact, CORE received about $104 million in voucher requests, with only $36 million available during the last funding cycle. And we heard the need to further support off-road categories from stakeholders in November. We also want to talk about bulk deployments because scaling is one of the most effective ways to bring down costs of zero-emission trucks and is another topic we'd heard from stakeholders in the past. There is a drainage set aside in HVIP of approximately $88 million as of March 18th this year, and we're looking to catalyze demand. As a result, we are proposing to readjust the drayage set aside parameters by one, dedicating a portion of drayage funds towards a bulk deployment solicitation. And of course, the remaining funds would still be available for first come, first served vouchers. And two, changing the eligibility criteria for these fleets operating in drayage, considering adjusting the parameters on the funds could allow the program to accelerate bulk deployment and bring down costs. And of course, this is our recommendation that we have for you today, and we would like to hear back from you. Your feedback will help ensure that the final funding allocations align with stakeholder priorities and deliver greatest possible impact given the resources available. Here we have the funding plan development schedule and important dates that lead up to the June board hearing. We will present similar information to get feedback at an evening community meeting on Tuesday, April 21st at 5 p.m. The May budget revision will be released on May 15th, at which point we will learn if any budget adjustments are proposed. And tomorrow, staff will begin to write the proposed funding plan, including consideration of today's feedback, and post it to the website on May 15th. That's when you'll have 30 days to review and comment on the plan, and then we'll present the proposed plan at the June 15th board meeting, and you'll have another chance to provide verbal comments on the plan. Next, we'll go over to our contact slide. This slide provides several ways to contact us. Our main email is shown second from the bottom, the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov. Staff will share the email address in the chat. We also have funding plan engagement opportunities web pages linked in the last line, which will also drop in the chat. Next, I just want to wrap up the presentation with our feedback slide. Please use the survey link or QR code to leave us feedback on this workshop. Your input helps us improve our future workshops, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. And with that, I'll pass it off to Peter to moderate the Q&A.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Amarit. We'll now open up the floor for questions and comments about this part of the presentation. To ask or make a comment, select the raise hand feature on Zoom under the Participants tab. For participants on Zoom joining us via mobile device, to tap raise hand in the More tab. If you're joining us by phone, press #2 to raise your hand. Once your line is open, please state your name and affiliation before speaking. You can also email questions to Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov. And our email monitor will notify us of your questions. We'll post the email address in the chat. Please, and without further ado, we'll get started with our first participants. All right. I am going to unmute Jamie Levin. Please state your name and affiliation, and then please provide us with your comments and your question.
Okay, thank you. Jamie Levin with the Center for Transportation and the Environment. I'm wondering if you're envisioning any of the proposed allocation to CORE, the 68 million, for demonstration purposes. And the reason I ask is that we were awarded a $2.5 million DOE grant that was matched with another $5 million of locally sourced and private capital for an off-road project at the Port of Oakland. And like everything else, as noticed in the introduction, the federal government pulled the $2.5 million. It's illegal, but they did it. And so that project basically has been put on indefinite hold. And I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity to go after core funding to fill that gap.
Thank you for your question, Jamie. The intended purpose of CORE is not demonstration projects. But I don't know if the CORE team or Nathan, if you have anything to add to that. Evan, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I can add. I think I appreciate the comment, Jamie, but yeah, at least our initial proposal is to put it, like Amrit said, is to direct the funding to CORE for the reasons she stated. I think any demonstration projects would have to be implemented through our SHIFT project. Certainly something that we're willing to take back into consideration, and really appreciate the suggestion and the feedback.
Yeah. No, I realize funding is limited. I understand that. I understand the overarching goal of CORE, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. It's another example of federal action that has impacted our our goals and objectives here. And it's just a project that was funded. We had Heister and some really interesting partners in the project, and it basically died under the new administration. So.
I just like to add two quick notes. First, we're talking about AQIP for these two fiscal years, but CARB has a number of incentive programs, so I would recommend reaching out to the team, and we can see if there's some way we can help. There's other possibilities, and I think it'd be really useful to reach out to the team, and we can work with you to see if there's some way we can support, whether it's with this funding or not. But the other one too is I'd like to learn more about what the project is specifically, like if it's commercial, pre-commercial, off-road, what sort of technology. So just another plug for working with us afterwards to learn more about what your project is, and then if there are opportunities with our, like I said, we have a number of programs within CARB that might be able to support. So.
Yeah, that would be great, Nathan. It's not only that project, there were other projects that were robbed by the withdrawal of arches. We've been working with the governor's office and with UC Davis on a modified plan based on the success of NorCal Zero. And I think it would be really great to sit down with the right staff at CARB and talk about these projects that really had federal funding that would have moved the technology forward towards commercialization, and now we're in abeyance because of the clawback of those funds.
I'm also hearing I have an echo, so I will try to fix that. Apologies.
One more thing, Nathan, I don't know if you've properly introduced yourself, so I'm going to remind folks, for at least on the CARB's end, if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
For that reminder, Evan, just really quick while I think there was an echo there. Hi, my name is Young Tran. I'm the manager of Core. And Jamie, thanks for your comments. Definitely, we have noted your comments here, and me and my team will reach out to you afterwards to set up a meeting.
Great. Thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
Thank you again, Jamie, for your comments. So now I'll ask to unmute, I believe I can't see their full name. I see Christian Corby from, please state your name and affiliation.
Yes, good morning. My name is Christian Corby, and I'm the Deputy Director at the California Electric Transportation Coalition. So I want to thank CARB staff for the workshop today and all the work that you put into it. I know these are hard choices with limited funds, so recognize these aren't easy decisions. And there is funding in HVIP and ISIF right now, but as always, those flagship programs, if their funding starts to get down to zero, that's always a big concern, because that's part of what's driving the wider medium and heavy duty ZEV market right now. So maybe just a little bit of caution to make sure we have funding reserves for those programs as well. Also, the public fleet set aside is down to 5 million, and those fleets are subject to the Advanced Clean Fleets rule. So wanting to make sure that they have funding, especially given that their budgets are often much tighter than private companies. Also, the ZESB program appears not to have funding, so perhaps some of the available AQIP funds could be shared with the ZESB to open it back up. So just a couple comments on those programs. And then I think generally Cal ITC would support opening up the drayage set aside for more bulk deployment. I think my question would just be if you have details on what changes you plan to make for the eligibility there, or if you're planning on holding a workshop on that. Cal ITC and the wider medium and heavy community would be very interested to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any member of SEP that has any information they can share at this time about those updates for the dredge?
Yeah, well, thank you, Christian, for your comments and question. I know this was kind of just our initial um kind of what we were initially putting out there. I know we don't really have details on the bulk deployment as of yet. This is something we just want to share with all of you and kind of get your thoughts. And I completely understand kind of, all of our heavy duty and medium duty projects are, they're critical in meeting California's air quality and clean technology goals. And I guess we just wanted to be strategic and again targeting we targeted the with core and we're trying to make a meaningful and long lasting impact for zero emission off road vehicles at this time in the off road sector at this time. I don't know if the core team or anyone has anything else to add to regarding the bulk deployment.
This is Nathan again. Part of I'm asking just to see if there's still an echo. So this is part of a test. Okay, perfect. But I was going to add too is that this would be something that we'll develop as time goes on, like through the implementation process. So definitely more details to come in the future to hash out what that bulk deployment and those parameters would look like. And I'm glad my mic is working again. So.
And Nathan, not to be nitpicky, but can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm sorry. I also didn't, second time not introduced. Nathan Dean, manager here at CARB, and I'm the manager overseeing the funding plan this year. So I'm working with Amber and Evan on this effort specifically.
And I would have said that, Nathan, but it's always weird, like introducing someone else. So
You're
thank
good.
you.
That was my bad.
Alrighty. So we'll go ahead to one of our next people with their questions or comments with their hands up. So I think it's Lindsay Shagatomi. I hope I pronounced that correct. I'm going to unmute you now. Go ahead and state your name and affiliation.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Shigatomi, and I'm speaking on behalf of Environmental Defense Fund, our more than 3 million members, including roughly 500,000 members who are in the state of California. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to CARB staff for convening this workshop. We all know that medium heavy-duty trucks are a major source of climate and harmful air pollution. And some of those greatest impacts are felt by communities that are located near freight corridors, ports, warehouses, and logistics hubs. And reducing pollution from the sector is really essential to achieving California's climate and public health goals. And this is especially important because in the current federal landscape, California's regulatory leadership and continued investment in incentive programs are really critical to sustaining momentum in this heavy duty zero emission vehicle market that we want to see building. Targeted investments, we think, are an essential tool for supporting adoption of zero emission trucks. These really help fleets at different stages of the transition while also helping to address those financial barriers that make these technologies difficult to access for so many operators. To that end, we appreciate CARB's continued investment in programs such as CORE. We recognize that funding is very difficult. And we see off-road equipment at freight facilities and warehouses. They contribute significantly to local air pollution, and programs like these that accelerate the deployment of zero emission cargo handling and industrial equipment can really deliver meaningful benefits for nearby communities. So given the limited AQIP funding, EDF understands the staff recommendation to prioritize core investments, particularly given the earlier stage of zero emission commercialization for many off-road equipment types and the significant air pollution reductions from these deployments. We also see that it is important that California is able to maintain strong momentum in this transition to zero emission on-road trucks, because these remain one of the largest sources of transportation emissions and growing. So we also see that programs such as HVIP remain really critical complements to AQIP investments, and EDF hopes that additional funding for HVIP and other heavy-duty programs will become available across the California budget to support the scale of the transition that we all know needs to happen. So as the state continues to design this broad incentive portfolio, we see that infrastructure readiness will also be critical. Vehicle incentives, we hope, will be aligned with charging infrastructure deployments and utility planning so that fleets can successfully deploy these zero emission trucks. And policy solutions like flexible interconnection agreements, hosting capacity analyses, and improved utility rate structures can really help accelerate not only grid energization, but also maintaining their reliability. And finally, the incentive programs we think will have the greatest impact when they operate as part of a coordinated system, right? So something that integrates infrastructure deployment, financing tools, durable policy signals. So we hope to see continued coordination across CARB, the California Energy Commission, and the California PUC, Public Utilities Commission. So because they're all essential to ensure vehicle deployment, infrastructure investment, and grid planning so that they all move forward together. I also had a few questions for CARB staff regarding the materials here. We would appreciate some additional clarity on how CARB is currently evaluating the relative roles of CARB and other programs like Farmer in the broader incentive portfolio. My second question is that the staff proposal notes that CORE is considered the most effective program within the AQIP portfolio, and it would be helpful for us to understand more about the analysis behind that determination. So whether this assessment reflects reductions in NOx, PM, greenhouse gases, or some combination of those factors. And then my final question, I think just echoes Cal ETC's comment that we're very interested in the bulk deployments for HVIP and the drayage set aside. And if possible to just repeat what you had shared during the presentation, I'd also really appreciate that. So thank you for the time. We really appreciate CARB's leadership, and we look forward to continuing to work with CARB and other stakeholders so that we can all work together to advance a durable and equitable transition to zero emission freight. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lindsay. I think I can try to dissect all these lots to digest, obviously. First of all, I'll say for folks who have prepared comments, it'd be helpful for us if you could email those to the email on the screen, the Clean Transportation Incentives email. I think that'd be helpful. And then Lindsay, since you're on the line still, the first question related to Farmer, can you repeat that, please? Was it? I think you're muted. Can we unmute her? I didn't quite catch the question, but I think I can kind of start going through those if we can.
Oh, sorry. I'm now able to unmute myself. Yeah.
There you go.
We just wanted some clarity on like the relative roles of all of the different AQIP programs. So we're really emphasizing CORE in this presentation, and just wanted to think about how you guys are thinking about the roles, importance, and the impact that other programs, we've mentioned Farmer in the past, so just thinking about how you're looking at the broader incentive portfolio.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think Amrit did a good job in the presentation kind of laying out the roles of all the programs themselves. I mean, if the question is, where Farmer fits into this low carbon transportation portfolio, when Farmer receives funding, it's typically outside of the LCT funding budget. It's a specific line item in the budget. That's not to say we can't use AQIP funding for Farmer, and that's something that we can certainly consider. But as far as all the other programs, they do serve a specific role. I mean, obviously, they all have their own individual eligibilities. Shift, for instance, is for technology advancement. The voucher programs like HVIP and CORE are for deploying those technologies and getting them out in the field. So I'm not sure if that answers that question, but can you state the second question again?
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah.
That's okay. I went really fast. The second question was because you guys mentioned that CORE is considered the most effective program, um, it would be helpful to hear more about the
Gotcha.
analysis.
Yeah. So no, I got it. So core, according to our quantification, core is actually the most cost effective in terms of criteria pollutant reductions, the most cost effective LCT or low carbon transportation heavy duty project in our portfolio. So as Amrit alluded to, we felt that, it was important to use this funding to sort of make a more meaningful impact and move the needle, so to speak. And we thought that, again, this is just our rough proposal, open to feedback and obviously open to making changes. But we thought that, using that as sort of one of the metrics used along with the high demand, the fact that off-road equipment generally has a very long lifespan, 10 to 15 years or more. So allocating funding to core does provide a more long-lasting, meaningful impact. We thought those were, good reasons to direct funding to core. But as far as emission reductions, core is the most cost-effective LCT heavy-duty project in our portfolio of the projects that were mentioned in the presentation.
And just to add to that, because I know you asked about, in terms of just transparency too, we are going to be releasing our quantification methodology report and our cost benefit report alongside the funding plan. So you can actually see our calculations and how we've worked those out for our programs and projects.
Thank you. That is very helpful.
And then I think you had a third one too, Lindsay. Sorry, we're going one by one on these.
No, that is, I love the focus attention. So thank you. It was, if you could just repeat what you had shared about the bulk deployments for HVIP and just reiterating, we are also very interested in hearing more details about this as they're developed, and we'd be happy to follow up and talk with you guys more about this.
And I think this is something that I think is going to involve additional engagement. This is sort of a programmatic change since we'll be utilizing existing funds within HVIP. So the HVIP team would be going through this process, and I think if you're interested, you'd want to engage with them. I don't know if we have very many details fleshed out at this point, other than the idea of bulk deployment has been brought up several times in these workshops. And the idea is that these bulk deployments result in more cost-effective deployments of these trucks, zero-emission trucks. And I don't know if someone from the HVIP team may have some additional details, but to my understanding, that's kind of where we're at now. More additional details to follow. This was just something we did want to touch on in the funding plan, since I think the idea is that we see value in this concept and we want to utilize existing funds more efficiently, and this may be a more efficient way to utilize those existing funds. But stay tuned, I guess, is the answer.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds great. And I think I tried to state in my comments that all of these programs exist together and they should be moving towards the same direction. So I definitely understand your thought process behind
Yeah,
that. So.
absolutely. And again, any prepared comments, please send them to our email because we consult those after the fact and they're very helpful. So if you could, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you so much for the time, and I appreciate all of the information.
Absolutely. Thank you for the thoughtful comments. I'll pass it back over to Peter.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan. All right, next we'll be going to Cristiano Facana. I'm going to ask you to unmute and please state your name and affiliation.
Hi, thank you so much, and thank you for CARB for putting this workshop together, and especially for all the incentive programs helping drive the market. Cristiano Façanha, I'm the head of road freight electrification with Smart Freight Center. We're an environmental nonprofit in clean transportation. And so on this very topic of bulk deployment, very supportive, like here on broadening the definition of in particular for drayage. And since like right now the definition is essentially facility based, focus on ports and rail yards, but the bulk of the truck deployment is actually economics based. And what we're seeing here is that the most effective use cases for electric trucks are really on the regional routes, like 150, 300 miles, where you have a very high annual mileage, right? All the way like from 80,000 to 120,000 or more. And this is really what enables like electric trucks to much sooner achieve cost parity, like with diesel. So that's really what adds scale, like to the market. A lot of these operations look very similar to drayage. Often they operate in the same regions and then have comparable impacts in disadvantaged communities, but they don't qualify simply because they don't touch a port or like a rail yard. And like while ports and rail yards are absolutely critical, they're not the only places where communities are exposed. So, we're seeing communities exposed, very much around logistics hubs, near residential communities. So if the objective is to reduce emissions and community exposure, like we should really be targeting trucks where they actually accumulate a lot of miles, right? So for example, a zero emission truck like running 100,000 miles per year, like for example in regional haul, versus a truck like operating strictly attending ports that wouldn't get like past like for example 50,000 miles per year. So the truck that actually accumulates more miles, they would deliver roughly twice the emission reductions for the same like level of incentive. So being more flexible on the definition like would allow like prioritization of this high utilization trucks like here.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. McKenna. Just to transition real quickly, we did receive an email from, I believe it was from Lauren Dunlap about the changes to drayage truck eligibility parameters. And it sounds like that's was answered in the previous question, that its details are still being worked out. And if you want, and we'll keep you guys in the loop on what those changes actually look like as we iron out the details. All right. And I believe next, we are going to be going to, I believe, hold on one second. Uh, Bill, I believe it's Bill McGovern. Sorry, I apologize if Bill Van Amberg next. I'm gonna unmute you. Please state your name and affiliation, please.
Good morning. This is Bill McGavern with the Coalition for Clean Air. And clearly, we all wish there were more funds in this funding plan. And we are among many who are now advocating in the budget process to get more money into this sector. In the meantime, I think that the proposal to emphasize core does make sense because, as has been pointed out, this is a cost-effective program. It's oversubscribed and underfunded, and the off-road engines do tend to be in service for a long time. I also think it's very important that the off-road sector is the one where the federal government has been the most backward and has done so little to regulate those emissions, frankly, not only in this administration, but in the previous administration. So we've seen the proportion of California's emissions that come from the off-road sector growing. And, we need strong regulatory standards, but in the meantime, we should complement with some of this incentive funding, even though there's clearly not enough to go around. So, we are supportive of this proposal and appreciate you holding this workshop this morning. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment, Bill. We appreciate your input.
Alrighty. So we did have another follow-up email from Lauren Dunlap. They'd like to ask if the reason for the core is more cost-effective is because on-road engines have been targeted for cleanup many more years than off-road, and the baseline in on-road is much cleaner than off-road. So by simple math, the core efforts would be much more cost effective than on-road efforts, where diesel engines are 90% cleaner than those of 10 to 15 years ago already. So I guess they're asking, you know, um, uh, if that's our thought process with that transition. So
Yeah, I think I can respond, Lauren. I appreciate the follow-up email. That could potentially be it. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is our proposal is based on um, more aspects than just the cost effectiveness aspect, like Amrit had pointed out. But it could certainly be true that the baseline is lower for core, but the fact is that they are more cost effective in terms of emission reductions, and like you said, um, they do last. Traditional off-road equipment has lifespans that are extremely long, and so that's certainly a consideration as well. So yeah, I'm not sure. I hope that answers your question, but if it doesn't, feel free to raise your hand and we can chat. So, but Peter, I think Bill McGavern's next. Go ahead.
yes, and I'll go ahead and unmute him. So feel free to, where is it,
Or
Bill?
Bill Van Amberg. I'm sorry.
Bill Van Amberg. Sorry, thank you. So please state your name and affiliation, Bill.
Yeah, hi. Good morning. Bill Van Amberg. I'm a strategic advisor, an independent consultant in this space, but worked in it for a long time. First, want to just say that I really appreciate and am very sensitive to the challenge facing CARB staff, working through the funding and now the right strategies for how to deploy the most effective uses of those funds. I think it's really important, and I really support the evolution that you're looking at for HFIP. I think it was a really great program, and it's done so much over its time. I was very involved in its foundation, but it is really time to actually look how it can get things to the next step. I think a couple of quick comments. Just one, really support the idea of expanding that definition of drayage. There's a really good reason why we have focused on drayage in California for many years, but drayage is a subset of a broader set of vehicles that need to be targeted that do very similar things, as a previous speaker mentioned, within our regions. There's food, beverage, local supply, goods movement. This is a much broader set of vehicles than drayage, which is a small subset, and it can allow us to target greater scale while still having the same air quality and emissions benefits and potentially more, because a lot of these vehicles do drive the mileage that's needed to actually make a strong business case. So really support you just being more flexible in that definition of regional vehicles, heavy duty vehicles. The other comment I'd make is on bulk deployments. And I think, again, I think this is a real strategic focus for CARB to look at how do we get more bang for the buck out of our incentive dollars? And also, how do we support industry that is actually starting to drive down cost? One of the best ways to get cost down is to get scale up. And we haven't been doing it one truck at a time so well, but we're starting to see that there's real opportunities to do large scale deployments. And in those cases, we can actually get to lower cost per truck prices. And I think one of the things this gives to CARB is some flexibility to look at, all right, how do we potentially maybe reduce the voucher amounts for these pooled or scaled purchase dollars so that we can use the money to extend for more vehicles at lower cost to the public. Also, flexibilities can help this work in terms of maybe flexibility on fleet caps for bulk deployments, flexibility in terms of potentially how dollars are deployed. Some of it could go to buy down the invoice cost. Some of it could go to the fleets to help them with other costs. For instance, in California, we have very high cost of electricity. This could help with the dealers on their fuel costs or the vehicle operators, the carriers on their fuel costs. So again, just to reiterate, really support and applaud CARB thinking strategically, looking to evolve the programs to kind of take us to the next step. and considering bulk deployments and a broader definition for drayage is really smart. So wholeheartedly support that.
Thank you, Bill. Really appreciate the comments. I do have a question though, since this concept of bulk deployment is kind of new to me, and since you're online, Bill, what are these bulk deployments? I mean, what dollar amount moves the needle for you? And I don't know if I'm supposed to be posing questions to you all, but I'm just curious, being part of this funding plan, what dollar amount moves the needle in terms of bulk deployments?
So, I guess you've got the mic, so you can do anything you want, Evan. So
Absolutely, go for it.
No. So I think as we've been starting to look at what amounts per truck bulk deployments could lead to in terms of the pricing, I think we could look at dollar amounts that might be half, three-quarters, half of what a typical voucher is, say in a Class 8 truck size. Something that actually could really extend the reach of HVIP dollars, but also send, to be quite honest, a price signal to the industry about, okay, this is where we think the new benchmark needs to be. So I do think we could be thinking more in those lines.
Well, I appreciate the follow-up. Thank you so much. I'll hand the mic back over to Peter.
All righty. Okay. So next I'll be going over to Jamie Hall. Please state your name and affiliation. I've unmuted you.
Thank you so much. My name is Jamie Hall, and I lead policy for EV Realty. We are a California-based company that builds, owns, and operates medium and heavy-duty truck charging hubs. First, I'll say Bill Van Amberg is always a tough act to follow, especially on this program because he's been involved since the beginning, but I will do my best. Agree with CalETC and EDF on the need to ensure we continue to fund the HVIP program. Several of us are working hard on this in the legislature, as I think Bill McGavern noted. So just want to make a note of the fact that we've got to find a way to keep this program funded. Looking beyond the funding allocations, we support the discussion around bulk deployment for HVIP. The devil is in the details here. I think part of how I've been looking at this is around the 20 truck cap. It is right now acting as an artificial throttle on the market. We could get some trucks on the road in the really near term if we relax this 20 truck cap, which is a win-win with, more sooner emission reductions, local community benefits, and continued momentum in the market at a time when we really need to see that. So if you were to relax this for the drayage set aside, there are fleets today that would happily buy more trucks, but they're at the cap. And if you were to bump it up even to just 30 or 40, this could sort of give a meaningful shot in the arm to the market here in the near term. As part of that, we also support broadening the definition of drayage and agree with the rationale laid out by Bill Van Amberg and Cristiano Fasagna on this topic. Some of these trucks doing regional haul that are visiting the ports, but maybe also spending time at intermodal facilities, doing more miles, not necessarily just back and forth from the ports, would be a good target for this. So sort of, again, very supportive of both those ideas. A question for you all, given that this is current year funding rather than next year's funding, is if there were to be, if we were to flesh this all out and there were to be broad support around these ideas, are these sorts of changes things that could happen sooner, or do you see these potential changes on fleet caps and drayage definitions being something that needs to go in the plan and to the board in June? Clearly the hope is for sooner.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think I can touch on that. So like Amrit had mentioned, this funding plan is going to include our plan for the current funding, which by current I mean fiscal year 25-26, as well as the proposed funding, which is fiscal year 26-27, which is just a proposal, and that's what was included in the January proposed budget back in January. We're proceeding as if we're going to get that, but as Amrit mentioned, that's CARB can't act on that until a budget act is signed. So we can act on the 25-26 funding. Right now, our initial proposal is to direct that entirely to core. These changes that we're talking about within HVIP are falling sort of outside of the funding plan process. Besides the bulk deployment concept, we will be including that concept, or at least proposing to include that concept, at least the bones of that concept in the proposed funding plan that'll go to the board in June. As far as flexibility within the drayage definition, fleet caps and these sort of implementation changes, these would be implemented through a public process through the any sort of implementation plan change or revision within the HFIT program itself. So it's outside of the funding plan process, if that makes sense. And I don't know if I can open the floor, I guess, for anyone from the HFIP team that could potentially respond to that. But that's sort of the idea, is that the funding plan process is outside of any changes, programmatic changes within these projects like HFIP. Those don't require board approval to make those changes. Those are implemented through regular implementation plan updates.
Hi, this is Young Trin again. I'm the manager over HFIP as well as core. Don't have too much more to add than what Evan already said. But specific to what you're saying, Jamie, I mean, we are considering these updates. Don't know if we're going to roll them out as an addendum to the IM or have just a whole new set of IM, which would be more work and take more time. And we are leaning towards having these rolled out more quickly rather than later. But definitely heard your comments about increasing the drayage cap from the rolling cap of 20 that we have right now. And also, I think we're hearing the stream of comments about expanding the drayage, how we are considering drayage. So appreciate those comments.
Well, thank you so much, Young, for helping this gentleman with his questions. And Evan too. Next, I'm going to ask Ryan Kenny to unmute himself. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hi, good morning. This is Ryan Kenny with Clean Energy. Thank you for your time this morning. I wanted to just look and ask about what is missing in today's presentation, which is a focus on the cleanest combustion trucks. Going back to the December workshop, slide 32 included a mention of encouraging early production of ultra low NOx engines and ZEVs. And there was also a mention in the PowerPoint about the significant problem of NOx emissions and risk of not meeting federal attainment. And California has the worst air quality in the nation. There's impacts to overburdened communities. Nearly half of on-road transportation NOx emissions come from heavy-duty trucks. And of course, we also know that because of the federal activity, CARB has determined that NOx could increase by 175 tons per day by 2037, and that the state is at risk of losing $75 billion in transportation funding. So the problem, of course, is the proliferation of the dirtiest diesel at 200 milligrams NOx when we have engines certified at 50 milligrams NOx and will get cleaner. So it was noteworthy today that there really wasn't any mention of the cleanest combustion engines being included in this possible rulemaking. ACF, of course, is gone, doesn't appear to be coming back. And we've lost just years of market signals from CARB to support the cleanest combustion trucks. So, our industry is supportive of both zero and near zero, but zero is really more of a longer term prospect. We really need to focus on the near term and intermediate term of getting rid of those 200 milligram NOx diesels. So I'm wondering why wasn't the cleanest combustion trucks included today like it was in December to really advance the conversation? And is this indicative of a policy change by CARB with this rulemaking process going forward? And I was also wondering about process, about our workshop still planned quarterly going forward. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan Kenny, for your
Yeah,
questions and
I
comments.
can start, and then I think
Yeah.
we're probably going to need someone from the HFIP team to cover this. But to start, Ryan, thank you for your comments. They are definitely noted. I think generally, like I had mentioned, so this funding plan isn't really going to outline any program changes in any of these particular LCT programs. It's really just um, a description of how we propose to allocate the funding within the suite of or portfolio of changes that we have, or portfolio of projects we have, rather. Right now, our initial proposal obviously is to direct it to core. We're receiving, some feedback, obviously, that may have missed the mark. We'd love to hear reasons why, and some quantifiable, numbers on how, you guys see this 70 million being split up amongst the programs. As far as the low NOx engines, um, I think we've got a few reasons why, at least on the HFIP side, I think we do, have a few reasons why, at least with this, until now, we'd like to prioritize funding to zero emission technologies. Obviously, the main driver, or one of the drivers, is the governor's executive order to advance these zero emission technologies. We've got a huge demand in the program for for zero emission trucks. Um, in the program. So I think I don't know if Young or Peter have anything to add, but I'll pass it off to them, I guess. But I mean, the main thing is we're not making program changes in this funding plan. I think any program changes or eligibility changes, again, are going to happen through the individual implementation manual revisions of each program, which is outside of the funding plan process.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Ryan. Young Trend again. I mean, we don't have any changes in the policy. HFIP was never intended to be, able to solve all the solutions. And as you can tell, we're trying to address as many as we can, but there's still other programs that do have funding for natural gas trucks. We're trying to do the best with what we have.
Right. Um, let's see here. Sorry. So next, I'll be going to Adam Browning. Please state your name and affiliation. Oh, sorry. Hold on. There you go.
Hi, Adam Browning with Forum Mobility. We also build large truck charging depots, principally for drayage, and provide charging and also a lease truck to motor carriers. And I just want to echo Jamie Hall's earlier statements, and particularly on the idea of increasing the cap on a number of trucks that a carrier can get HVIP vouchers for. We have a lot of customers from small to large, and the right now there's just a lot of people waiting for, frankly, the Tesla vouchers, the Tesla truck to be built, and they would buy more if they were able to. And so the quickest way to get things continue to move, to continue to build the scale, to continue to bring down the prices would be to also allow for a fleet to order more trucks at a time. So I'll leave it at that. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Adam. Noted. Obviously, the HFIP team is present, so I'm sure they're taking notes. Really appreciate the comment.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much again, Adam. Next, I'm going to go to an email comment that we received. So we received an email from William Mencia from the City of Sacramento Department of Public Works. He says, hey, I was wondering, with regards to the funding plan for medium and heavy duty vehicles, whether CARB was putting MSRP caps on medium and heavy duty OEMs as well. I attended the light duty workshop yesterday, and that program is putting MSRP caps on the OEMs for light duty vehicles. So I want to know if this will be the same for medium and heavy duty vehicles as well. So if we can have somebody maybe from the AQIP team, if they have any thoughts on that. Just a moment.
I can chime in while someone, to be honest, I'm unsure if that's something they're considering. But again, I'll mention that, they are present, and we're making note of all of these comments, and it's certainly something we can consider.
Hey, Evan, thanks. This is Young here. So thanks, William, for the question. Actually, MSRP caps were something that we had discussed and presented at public workshops last year. And I think through the summer of last year, we talked about OEM price caps and a potential to provide industry with more visibility on reducing prices over time. And I think the proposal at that time was something like, approximately 5% every year for the next 3 years, and ultimately to signal a trend where we need to reduce truck prices. I think part of that evaluation is continuing to look at the market and where we are, because this market is constantly fluid, and we continue to engage with fleets, dealers, and OEMs on this topic. So right now, we don't have we don't have anything more concrete to institute that price cap, but I think as you're hearing about like bulk deployments and different voucher amounts and how to get more scale, more trucks out there, these are the areas that we're looking to try to get more trucks on the road. So would be happy to have a discussion with you on things that you are proposing, and look forward to any more additional comments that you send to us. And that email, if someone could drop that email for the CARB email, I believe it's info at H50. I'm sorry, I won't quote it, but my team will post that email for you on there. That's specific to the H50 team. Thank you.
Thank you, Young. All right. Next, we're going to go to Kellen Belcher. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Please state your name and affiliation.
Good morning. My name's Kellen Belcher, representing Earth Justice. Thank you so much for the workshop and for the opportunity to comment. I wanted to start by saying that we support CARB's proposed investment in CORE, a program that's been highly effective and efficient in accelerating the transition to non-polluting zero-emission equipment, especially in freight-impacted communities like ports. The CORE program has delivered clean air benefits in the communities that need them most. And in fact, according to California ClimateInvestments.gov, as of 2024, over 85% of CORE funds had provided direct benefits to disadvantaged communities, and we want to see that continue. I also wanted to emphasize the need for additional investment in zero-emission trucks and truck charging infrastructure. We understand funding available for investment is limited, and as several others on this call have noted, there are many groups, including Earth Justice, that are actively advocating for more funding to invest in zero emission trucks and help bridge the gap between the limited funding that's currently available and CARB's projected demand for the HVIP program, which is $450 million. So just wanted to uplift that switching to non-polluting zero-emission trucks is a really critical investment in cleaning up California's dangerous air pollution. Heavy-duty diesel trucks make up only 6% of the vehicles on the road in California, but they produce a disproportionate amount of air pollution, including over 35% of transportation NOx emissions and 25% of on-road greenhouse gas emissions. We want to see our state invest its dollars in solutions that will clean up our largest sources of pollution, and zero emission trucks are that kind of investment, a proven way to slash harmful pollution from the state's most polluting sector to protect public health while growing our zero emission manufacturing economy. Transitioning to zero emission trucks will continue to grow that zero emission manufacturing economy, which already includes over 55 zero emission manufacturing companies and supports over 26,000 jobs. Communities that are most burdened by freight pollution in the state have consistently reiterated that they want to see investments in zero emission technologies. With limited funding available, investments should deliver direct benefits in those communities that are most impacted by freight pollution. As an example, at the San Pedro Bay ports in the South Coast Air District, investments are already helping move the freight system towards zero emission trucks. We want to see California build on that progress by continuing and expanding those investments at ports and other freight corridors across the state. I also wanted to emphasize that purchase incentives need to be paired with investments in charging infrastructure. Vehicle funding and infrastructure funding need to go hand in hand if we're going to see accelerated deployment. We're also interested in understanding more about what CARB staff have raised today about bulk deployments through HVIP and potential changes to eligibility for drayage trucks. So we'll be planning to continue engaging as those concepts evolve. And, as those concepts evolve, would love to have future opportunities to offer feedback. I also wanted to close by just asking a quick clarifying question. I know you mentioned that as of March 18th, there's 88 million left in HVIP's drayage set aside. I'm wondering if you could clarify if that's kind of the only remaining funding left for HVIP at this time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kellen. I think I can touch on your last question at least. Well, thank you for the comments. I think it was the majority of them were comments, and we take that into consideration. So thank you. I'm looking at the funding ticker, and if you want, this is publicly available on HVIP's website, californiahvip.org, and it's under the funding tab. There's $88 million, as was mentioned, in the drayage set aside, but there is $82 million in standard HVIP. About 30 million in ISEF and 5 million reserved for public fleets. So I hope that answers that question. And then any of the program changes that you've mentioned, like you said, those again will be hashed out through the HVIP implementation manual or revision or other public process outside of the funding plan. So thank you for your comments.
All right. So we'll go on to our next person with their hand up. So we have Rob Delcourt. I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute. Please state your name and affiliation, please.
Good morning. This is Rob Delcourt. I'm the CEO of Green Numerics. We develop hydrogen fuel cell powertrains, and we're also a vehicle system integrator. So we can convert any and develop any vehicles into hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Our company is proudly based in California, and I'd like to thank you, CARB, for today's opportunities to provide public input. It's much appreciated. I'd like to point out that currently there's almost no hydrogen vehicle representation in the core funding. Funding the entire almost 70 million into core will have a dampening effect on the hydrogen industry. And it sends the wrong signals to the zero emission technology communities and also private investors, and can potentially render California to lag behind other states and other countries in the hydrogen race. So given the mini collapse that we've seen in the hydrogen fuel cell industry last year with the bankruptcy of two companies, Hyzon and Nikola, for example, more funding is urgently needed to demonstrate and deploy new hydrogen fuel cell technology for both on-road and off-road applications. So these technology demonstrations and deployment projects will help reduce TCO, an important theme. It also will prevent brain drain from California. It helps us to keep high-tech jobs here in California. It'll also serve to increase California's technology competitiveness in hydrogen and also provide more hydrogen equipment selection to operators. So we hope that CARB will consider moving $30 million out of the 70 million to continue to fund the SHIFT programs for technology demonstration projects and continue to demonstrate disruptive free commercial technology in drayage trucks and fund development of new hydrogen port equipment with commercialized fuel cell technology to help broaden the use of hydrogen fuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Noted. 30 million to shift is a recommendation. Thank you. Appreciate the comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Perfect. So next, we're going to go to Lisa McGee. I'm going to ask to unmute. Please state your name and affiliation and provide us with your questions and or comments.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'm a Tony Street Center. And appreciate this meeting today, and certainly want to comment on the bulk roll drayage. And I think Jamie put it right. The devil's in the detail. When we think we've got a lot of data in this program to understand what's actually happening, and I certainly want to share some of that today. We've certainly tried to reset since the administrative change at the federal level to figure out how California will continue to adopt ZEBs and advance the technologies. And certainly drayage is certainly a great opportunity and a low-hanging fruit. California's got over 250,000 California registered trucks, with 65% of those being aged out. And while the cap is something that can be perceived as holding people back, actually it does not. We're a dealer that's submitted over 500 vouchers, actually over 700 vouchers, and redeemed over 500. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, that cap is just an annual cap. What holds you back is either the customer not accepting delivery on an annual basis or the OEM not able to deliver. And so making sure that that's well understood, because in theory, all you have to simply do is deliver those 20 units in your annual cap, and you could deliver another 20 that same year, get those delivered and redeemed, do another 20. I think otherwise what we're doing is holding hostage the funding. And when we look at the data shows that we've got in the ZEB HVIP impact data through 12/31/2022 of the 33,000 pound GVWR drayage vouchers out there, we've got 815 units that have been redeemed and 199 million. And then, I'm sorry, that's unredeemed. 815 units unredeemed and 199 million, while redeemed is 111 million. And of those redeemed, there's 419 drayage tractors. A total of 41 entities have participated. And of those 41 entities that have redeemed, it's only a total of 8 entities that have done over 10 units. And when we look at the unredeemed that are between 10 and 20, you've got 4 different years combined there of unredeemed. In 2021 of drayage, you've got from 2021 fiscal year, that's 5 years old. You've got 1 entity that still has 50 unredeemed vouchers. In 2023, which is 3 years old, you've got 1 entity that hasn't redeemed 11. In 2024, 2 years old, you've got 4 different entities, 21, 10, 10, and 10. What's super interesting, in 2025, You've got a total of 30 different entities that are requesting between 10 and 20 that have unredeemed. So that's a total of 663 drayage trucks that haven't redeemed since pretty much September, and 159 million. So all those entities have to essentially do, whether it's year 21, 23, or 24, 25, is simply just deliver, and you can continue moving forward. So I want to make sure, from someone with firsthand experience on the front line of this issue and helping our customers deliver more than 20 units a year, it's just making sure that customer can take delivery and the OEM can actually do so. Otherwise, we're just holding funding that's hostage, and it's unnecessary. These are supposed to be real vehicle orders. So I just want to make sure I'm making those comments. In addition, when it comes to thinking about equity, right? We've removed so many guardrails already. The bulk is just another guardrail that doesn't support equity. And that's a great concern for me when we think about those truck drivers, which are independent owner operators, which are largely supporting drayage operations, certainly are those with the least amount of resources. And equity's always been at the forefront of these board meetings around funding for clean transportation. And I think Bill had put it right. We've got to find this way to redefine. We've been doing ZEVs since 2009 or 10 in this program. And so we've got 15 years of collected data. I think what we really need to start doing is we do need this chance to reset and revamp, because while the air pollution control codes are certainly trying to regulate what we choose in technology to clean up the air, I think what we've also seen is that we've got this fragmented process that doesn't move the needle forward quick enough and fast enough for the billions of dollars that we put into this program. And so I think find a way to not just look at a health code standard regulation, but also how do these programs support private investment and a business model that creates a profit for those that got skin in the game. We've got a program right now on the ZEV side that we only have a rule that requires one service center in the state. That provision's super antiquated. I think we've got to find this way to get beyond the program the way it was began and the provisions that it's surrounded by, and we have to revamp that and really put something meaningful together based on the data that shows that we've got fragmented issues that need to be addressed in order to make this scalable, because the OEMs haven't changed their position of what they're doing today. We're all moving forward with cleaner technologies. So there's great opportunities, especially in California. And then going on to just also kind of addressing a couple other things, knowing that we've also got a program that CARB and HFIP have a 90% rule on the selling cost, and the voucher rebate is capped at 90% of the selling price of the truck. And I understand that. I think it makes perfectly good sense. But there's been two major changes that have really affected back to that same guy in the drayage tractor, right? He's facing a really unique position. Anybody that's getting a class 7 or 8 is facing an additional 12% federal excise tax on that larger cost of a truck that's truly unaffordable, what is a ZEV. And when we think about the additional 10% that we have in sales tax on average, and then a 1% on DMV fees, now we're at the extra 10%, we're at 33% out the door. So I want to make sure that when we think about these funding tables and drayage, we need to do more for the small fleet independent owner operator that's got an aged truck. He needs to be at 100%. We need to do something on eligible costs that's stacked with funding per the new executive order from June of 2027, and make sure that we're revamping CARB's program so that eligible costs that are not included in the HVIP program will allow stacking with those types of eligible costs that are included in other programs. It's at minimum for drayage and for small fleets. And then I also think as we go forward, set aside for hydrogen and small fleet needs to be implemented. We have no more guardrail, and we should have continuous funding that protects equity for small independent owner operators. Thank you.
Hi, this is Inder from the HFIP team. Thanks, Lisa, for your comments. I know that we have kind of, I think you've touched on a couple things that we are kind of considering and a couple things that we will definitely consider after your comments. First, I wanted to address the fleet caps. I think that that is some of the underlying logic for why we had the original fleet cap. So I think those comments were interesting and appreciated. Also, in terms of the taxes, I think that is a issue that we are currently still evaluating. There's a lot of moving pieces there. There's stacking, other programs paying for taxes, and how that all kind of fits together is kind of a complicated calculus that we're trying to kind of reevaluate as a lot of programs have morphed their eligibility and what they're willing to cover. And so I expect that we'll have some movement on that and some proposals in the next coming weeks. So look forward to sharing that with you guys at some of our future meetings. So.
And just so you know, Lisa, too, we have information in the chat to stay in contact with the HFIP team. Now, moving forward, I'm going to go to our next question and or comment. I'm going to turn it over to Todd DeYoung. I'm going to ask to unmute. Please state your name and affiliation, please.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Todd DeYoung with the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Thank you for the opportunity and thanks for the presentation this morning. I wanted to circle back with something brought up probably about a half hour ago now by Lindsay. And there was a discussion about effectiveness of LCT programs, and the farmer program was sort of brought up. And I wanted to circle back and clarify something I thought I heard Evan say, in that the farmer program could, although it hasn't historically been funded with AQIP funds, that it was potentially an eligible program to be funded under AQIP. Just, the farmer program, I think if you're looking at it in terms of cost effectiveness and impact, I don't think CARB runs a more cost-effective program than the farmer program. Historically, it's been at the very top in terms of cost effectiveness and impact. The last several years, we've received a zero allocation from the state in this program. And speaking just from the San Joaquin Valley, I can tell you in terms of demand, we have close to $700 million in demand just in our district alone. That's applications in-house awaiting for funding. And so the demand is there. If you look at this in terms of cost effectiveness, in terms of other LCT programs that are currently funded, if you were to do a comparison between the currently funded LCT programs and the farmer program, I think you would find that farmer is as cost effective as the most cost effective LCT programs out there right now. So I'm interested in exploring opportunities to get farmer program funding through this process, and was curious if that had been thought about and what CARB's thinking is there.
After this meeting, okay.
Yeah, I think Lisa's unmuted still. If you could mute, there you go. Todd, I saw Todd's name and was like, I wonder what he's going to talk about. No, thanks, Todd, for bringing that up. And as I mentioned, I mean, typically we use AQIP funds to fund the suite of LCT programs that we have. And I think that was sort of our idea with this initial proposal. When farmer does receive funding, which, as you've noted, didn't receive much or hasn't received funding in the last couple of years, besides the $2 million allocation from a couple of years ago. We usually rely on those, line item allocate or appropriations through the budget for farmer. It's not to say this funding can't go to farmer, and I think that's something we can certainly consider internally. And we've, noted your comments, obviously, and we'll take those into consideration. But yeah, we really appreciate the feedback and the comments. I think Yeah, I mean, part of the challenge is the funding that we have and making a meaningful impact. I think there is arguments or justification for allocating the funding to core, but as you've noted, farmer is, the cost effectiveness in farmers pretty high. But yeah, certainly something we can consider, and really appreciate the comment.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. I would love to continue this conversation with you as you guys are putting a finer point on your plan. Really appreciate it.
And this is coming from someone who helped build the program, so I'm completely biased, and I'll provide that disclaimer as well. So moving on.
Well, I was gonna make a couple comments too, just to be a little bit stronger. I know Evan likes Farmer, and Farmer is a great program. As you mentioned, Todd, I believe you're right. Farmer is, I think, our most cost-effective program. But with the discussion point earlier, we're kind of talking about LCT specific programs. And I just wanted to highlight that in the past, the Farmer program has never been part of this funding plan, the LCT umbrella. So although, as Evan said, we can consider it, it is something that we've not done in the past. Traditionally, all of the farmer funding came through the ag portion of the governor's budget, separate line items. So although it is something we can look into, it's not something we've done before. But another thing I wanted to hit on is that cost effectiveness and emission reductions is super critical. It is really important. One of why we were pitching core, but there are other aspects of this funding, such as pushing momentum in the ZEV market, deploying zero emission technologies. And that is something that, core and the other programs that we talked about today, they're intended for sort of zero emission technology. So I wanted to hit on that, also benefit for core and those programs. Which is one of the other reasons why we are sort of proposing what we're proposing, and that's what a big part of what LCT is trying to do is to support the ZEV market. So I just want to throw that out there as well.
No, thanks, Nathan. I certainly appreciate that, and I understand. You guys are trying to thread the needle in terms of supporting the governor's executive order and moving zero emission forward. And obviously, as an air pollution control district, we're super supportive of those efforts. But talking about we haven't done it in the past. Well, we haven't been aced out of farmer funding for 3 straight years in the past either. So I mean, in my opinion, like, all bets are off, and we need to be looking at everything from a fresh lens and fresh perspective. So would really love to continue the engagement there. I understand the focus that core has on zero emission. Zero emission is eligible in farmer as well. So but would just love to continue those discussions as you guys finalize your plan. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Todd, for your comments and questions. Real quick, I'm going to go to the next participant that has their hand raised. That'll be Christopher Chavez. I'm going to ask to unmute you. Please state your name and affiliation.
Yes, hi, Chris Chavez, Deputy Policy Director at Coalition for Clean Air. Just to add on to the comments that Bill McGavern made earlier on behalf of Coalition for Clean Air and our priorities. One thing I wanted to uplift as well is the role of electric school buses. And really emphasize that they have benefits to California, obviously California students and California communities. Just under 1,500 electric school buses are either delivered or in operation, and nearly an additional 2,000 have been awarded or currently on order. Electric by transitioning over to electric school buses, California stands to gain over 155 million every year in public health benefits and climate benefits due to the reduced pollution. One thing that we really appreciate in the presentation today of CARB's program as it relates to electric school buses is the scrappage requirement for older buses to be decommissioned and scrapped. So we think that is good, and would love to see other programs include that as well. But again, just wanted to uplift that. And again, we understand this is a difficult budget year, that there are many, many different priorities. But as you're going through this process, also including electric school buses and then providing funding for those. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Chris, for your comments. Next, I'm going to go to Lynette Spinenza. Please state your name and affiliation. I'm going to ask them to mute you now.
Hi, Lynette Sapienza. I'm principal consultant with Dome Innovation Partnership, and we represent a number of small businesses, particularly in California. So thank you for the time to comment in this meeting. Lisa McGee covered a lot of it that I wanted to comment on. However, not necessarily from a drayage standpoint for us and our clients. A lot has been spoken about bulk buy, and some of my concerns would be that representing a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, that could potentially take up a lot of those vouchers very quickly from them and not give them an opportunity to participate in some of the HVIB programs. They represent 99% of the fleets in California and typically spend a lot of their day operating in these low air quality in disadvantaged areas and in residential neighborhoods. So some of the things for us that I would ask for in this would be to, especially if you go to a bulk, but even if you don't, is really think about a small business set aside to make sure that there are access for these types of businesses. They typically don't have large groups of people that are constantly watching for funding, gathering paperwork and submitting before large businesses and corporations secure all the funding. And they're the ones that really truly need it to get them into the game. Some of the other things that could really be useful on that topic of these small businesses is what is eligible. I know HVIB has opened up pickup trucks to public fleets, which is great to hear. It would be incredible to have that opened up to non-public fleets as well. I think you guys do a great job of monitoring the program and keeping out people that don't belong in it. And I know that's always a concern when we've spoken to about opening up pickup trucks, but I think you guys do a great job already. And one of the things we've looked at is, like Lisa talked about how it's so hard with all these extra fees to get into this business. Well, that's even harder for a small operator that this is kind of do or die for them if this doesn't work. And they can't look at a TCO of 5 years. They are looking at today. So getting them in a vehicle that they would like to use, and maybe you even limit it to that first, 1 or 3 if you're worried about pickup trucks. What we have seen is once they get in the business, they want to keep converting, but they need help getting over that primary initial risk aversion of, is this a good thing for my business? Is this going to hurt me? Is it going to work? So having some stuff to really get them in when they make up so much of the fleets would be huge. Or even think about increasing the amount for those first couple. I know there's the ISAF, but just really think about that, and even including maybe your L2 in the first voucher or two, again, to keep that whole business going. So we're really advocating for that small and medium-sized business that makes up so much of the fleets in California and so much of the usage of fleets in areas with low air quality that truly want to convert. They see the economics in it potentially, but need some help really getting into that first vehicle or so. So that's really important to us, especially as you guys are thinking about changes you make to the program, how access to the program changes, etc. So appreciate the time, and we will email in our comments as well so that you have them.
Thank you, Lynette, for your comments and questions. I believe we have Spritz is gonna, oh, sorry, let me grab her real quick. We have a member of CARB staff that's gonna help with that. All right, I think you're unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Lynette, thank you for your comment. We definitely have noted your feedback. I wanted to point out a couple things. So First, my name's April, and I'm the HVIP co-lead, partnered with Ender. If we proceed with a bulk purchase order situation, we would still have money available for first come, first serve vouchers. We would not scrap the mechanism we have now. This would be something in addition. There's also the likelihood that small fleets would be able to participate in the bulk purchase option. And CARB will maintain its focus on equity. So we are not forgetting about the small and medium fleets.
Thank you, April. And please do send your comments to Lynette to our Clean Transportation Incentives email as well. Thank you so much again for your comments and questions. Next, we'll be going to Margaret Bolter. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I'm going to ask to unmute. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hi, this is Margaret Bolter with Zeem Solutions, and really appreciate the time today and the thoughtful discussion. Zeem Solutions builds and operates charging depots for commercial fleets, and we work with all different types of fleets. So really looking forward to having this discussion. I'm going to bring up two things that have already been brought up by different people. First, thinking about that fleet voucher cap. Again, really good discussion. It's important that we strike a balance between having funding available in the program and also driving adoption and letting fleets that really want to buy these zero emission vehicles do so. And we, know customers who are chomping at the bit to put more orders in, but they've hit their 20 voucher limit. And I do understand that guardrail is in place for a reason, but I do think, maybe there's room to increase that cap to a different number. I don't know what the right number is, but keeping that mechanism of the cap in place while still just slightly increasing the cap would be really beneficial and help get more fleets into the program. And these fleets that are buying multiple vehicles, maybe in bulk, or maybe they're a large fleet, so they have, more capital to expend to buy these vehicles, they can help seed a secondhand market and really drive volume in the market to bring down costs for everyone. So I do think there's a huge benefit to, again, letting maybe large fleets, maybe small fleets that are very gung-ho, go beyond that 20 voucher cap. And then in addition, there's been really good discussion around increasing allowable costs under the program. For example, allowing other incentive programs to cover the cost of taxes and fees. I think CARB has taken a good step in thinking about covering tariffs in this really uncertain environment, but taxes and fees can be extremely prohibitive for fleets. And there are a lot of other funding agencies that I know are eager to help cover that gap. And so perhaps changing some of the language where, it says for privately owned vehicles, the total voucher amount plus all other eligible public incentives or other discretionary public funding, such as grants, may not exceed 90% of the full vehicle cost. Right now it says excluding taxes and fees, and maybe we just change that to including taxes and fees for potentially a simple fix. I'm sure it's more complicated than just that. But yeah, really appreciate the time and look forward to having a continued discussion on this. Thanks.
Thanks, Margaret. Comments noted. I know taxes and fees have come up a few times, and I know that's something that the HVIP team is working through and considering. So kind of keep in touch with their process, and any program changes will be done through their update. So thanks again.
So thank you so much, Margaret, for your questions and comments. Next, we'll be going to Carolyn Delcourt. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Please state your name and affiliation before asking your question and or providing us with comments.
Thank you, Peter. This is Caroline Delcourt.
I'm the founder of Delco Tech Consulting. It's a government funding consulting company. We help startups to fund the technology development, and we also help fleets, especially small fleets, to select technology and vehicle that's suitable for the duty cycle. I'm also a founder of the Del Community 501c3. We perform a lot of community outreach to educate the public and increase the capacity to deploy zero-emission vehicle in low-income and disadvantaged communities. So that's why I'm representing the voice of the technology startup and also some small fleets. And really thank you, CARB, for the opportunity today to provide the feedback. Want to put a little bit comments on the decision of like putting all the funding to core only. Of course, I'm happy to hear that CARB is actually scaling up the deployment of zero-emission vehicle. It makes sense. And but there's a two intrinsic issue if you put all the money into core only. Number one is core is only fund off-road, and I truly believe off-road is important too. But however, even I echo what Lindsay and also Kellen said earlier in this workshop, we still need to fund on-road trucks because they travel around. They actually they constitute 25% of the emissions, and they need help. And then also, I also agree with Matt Williams about that. We need to target trucks that accumulate a lot of miles. Like we have great selection of electric trucks, and we have some selection on hydrogen truck. Not as many, definitely because of the Hyzon and Nikola is gone. So we still have some, but just not enough. So, but is this? I've been hearing from the fleet that they still want to try the hydrogen trucks because they feel like it will fit their duty cycle. Especially, I talked to some small fleets, and they said that they have routes that can benefit from a hydrogen trucks, but they just need to know like what technology out there is enough for them to select, what is the reliability, and the cost. The cost is also an issue that we need to bring down the cost of hydrogen trucks if we really want to be able to use that technology in a wider applications. So that's why my first comment is please fund also on road truck. So and also hydrogen trucks. So the second concern I have, why I think it's very, very interesting, is if like core is great, AQIP is great. Honestly, for scaling up, deployment is fantastic. Incentive is needed, right? For vehicle, encourage people to adopt, help the fleet operator to reduce the money they have to take out, right, from their pocket to buy the truck. However, incentive program works if there's enough selection of affordable technology. Otherwise, we are stifling any technology that maybe actually help to reduce the cost in the future. Why did I say that? Because I also talk to like a lot of startup as well. They come to me because I help them to look for funding to support the technology development. And they have present a lot of great technology in reducing the total cost of ownership in terms of the vehicle cost from the baseline cost we have today. So, but only if they're given a chance to deploy and demonstrate those technology, right? Then they can take the technology to the commercial level so that they can bring down the cost of the truck. Why is it important to bring down the cost of the truck? Resonating what Bill Van Ambert said today. He's actually have a really good idea of eventually CARB will have to reduce the number of value per voucher, right? If the cost price stay the same and you reduce the voucher cost, it means that the fleet operator have to take on more of the difference, right? Which is impossible for small fleet. So if you can bring down the cost of the vehicle, then you can bring down the voucher. So that's why it's very important to continue to have money to go into this technology demonstration project to demonstrate pre-commercial technology to keep driving the vehicle cost down. Instead of the problem is not problem. I really like core and HVIP. Incentive only help already commercial technology, and they're not driving technology in innovation to keep bringing down the cost. So there is an intrinsic problem. What if like look at Hyzon and Nikola, they're gone. Suddenly, like hydrogen trucks is like not a lot, not enough. Like there's still some good technology out there, like Hyundai. So the thing is, like, we still need to keep going, so that we can bring down the cost of the truck with technology. Then you can bring down the incentive. Then you can increase the number of deployment for the same amount of money. So that's why we need to have affordable solution. So my conclusion is that, like, I want to say, instead of the whole 7 million go to only incentive, maybe consider a portion of it to continue to push technology, focus on bringing down the cost of the vehicle. That will help the small fleet as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for your comments. And again, we appreciate your feedback on the funding plan and our priorities when it comes to funding, using the funding for AQIP.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, definitely. The SHIFT program is a really good program you can consider.
Gotcha. So that's where you'd want to be, the direction of like a split from
Yeah,
core. Is that what you're advocating for, correct?
Exactly. We're advocating that you can take like a portion. I think last time you guys have like a 48 million, or like quite a big one, but they just started to implement. So it means that you still don't know if those projects, how it fanned out. So so maybe consider moving like a 20 million, 30 million into the SHIFT and keep pushing the technology to reduce the cost of the vehicle. So that would be my comment and feedback. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate it. All right. Next, we'll be going to Gracina Mohabir, I believe. I hope I pronounced your name right. I apologize if I didn't. I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute. Please state your name and affiliation, if any, before stating your question and/or comments.
Hi, good morning. Grishina Mohabir with California Environmental Voters. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment today. We understand that CARB is thinking very deliberately about how to allocate a limited pot of funding and appreciate the careful consideration in this proposal. Targeting off-road emissions via new funding for core will undoubtedly be beneficial for transitioning technology for sectors that rely heavily on various types of off-road equipment, and this will ease air pollution burdens for populations adjacent to freight hubs like ports. Additionally, with funding being limited, EnviroVoters will also be advocating for greater resources to help match the projected annual funding needs that CARB had shared in their November Drive Forward incentive workshop. Long-term funding certainty is critical to maintaining market momentum and continuing investment in the wider array of medium and heavy-duty vehicles, including on-road trucks. With continued purchase investments, we must also see ongoing charging infrastructure investment in tandem to ensure deployment is thorough and effective as ZEV adoption scales up. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing to engage on this.
Thank you so much for your comments and feedback. And appreciate your time again. Thank you for joining the call with us. Next, I'll be going over to Mike Macias. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, Mike. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. Please state your name and affiliation, if any, before providing us with your questions and/or comments. Thank you.
Hi, Peter. This is Mike Macias with TCI. I just want to echo what Lisa McGee and others have mentioned. There definitely needs to be some consideration into the not just allowing just the drayage side, but also definitely small, as we represent some small fleets, but the majority that we see out there is the medium-sized fleet that definitely needs to be considered. And also touching on the taxes and fees that other programs cover. We definitely want to echo that support there and allowing that in the future. To help bridge that and get drive those numbers down to where it can make sense for companies that are not obligated but are willing, as long as the economics are there. So yeah, I just want to, like I said, echo on those two areas. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for reiterating your comments and concerns. I appreciate the feedback that we have on the about those particular issues. Next, I'm going to go to Nico, and I think it's Bauenkamp. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, sir. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Please state your name and affiliation, if any, before providing us with your questions and or comments. Thank you.
I go by Nico, that's fine. The pronunciation of my last name is more challenging. It's Bouwkamp. But Nico Bouwkamp with GTI Energy, working on the business development side for mobility, and I'm also representing Rail Power, a switcher locomotive manufacturer based both here in California as well as in Michigan. And my question was related to the core program. I did not hear too many comments about locomotives, or haven't heard too many so far, but just want to make sure that with the shift towards core, that locomotives are still included, even though I know currently there are no switcher locomotives or larger listed on the eligible core equipment posting that's online. So just if you could say a little bit more about that, unless I missed it, and then I stand corrected. Thank you.
Hello.
Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica Monterosa here. I'm the core policy lead and have worked with eligibility in the past. So locomotives are eligible, and we've talked to a few manufacturers, but they have not finalized the application. So we are open to more applications from manufacturers, and if there's any insight about the application process or the core requirements that might be needing more thought or more conversation, we're definitely open to those feedback and input as well. We're having some implementation work groups in the summer, so that would be a better avenue for those type of conversations. But overall, locomotives are eligible. We just need more manufacturers to apply.
Okay, I'm in the process of starting that conversation up. So should I maybe send an additional email to the email for this initiative or activity?
I can put the core specific email in the chat shortly.
Okay, thank you. I think I have it, but please do so. Much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Nico, for your questions and comments. Alrighty, do we have any more? It looks like it slowed down a little bit here. And I think we might be passing it off soon if we don't have any more questions. Again, feel free, you can email us questions to the Clean Transportation email, which is cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov. We'll continue to take your feedback into consideration.
And no emails, Peter. So yeah, with that, I'd maybe give it a couple more seconds, but I think we can go ahead and pass it off to Peter Christensen if there's no other comments. He wanted to provide some comments. Go ahead, Peter.
Thanks, Evan, and thanks to everybody. I just wanted to jump in and really thank everybody here today, everybody that joined us and spent your valuable time giving us your feedback today. It's really inspiring to hear all of the interest, all of the demand for incentives across all of the clean technology space. We heard from so many of you today, whether we're talking about whether your interest area is on-road trucks and buses or off-road equipment. Just hearing about the demand and existing wait list for $700 million in funding in the San Joaquin Valley for clean tractors in the farmer program. Clearly, there is a strong demand and a strong need across the entire spectrum of cleaner technologies. So that's really important, especially at this time. Clearly, the market is ready. Clearly, stakeholders are ready, and fleets want to get clean vehicles and clean equipment out in place in California right now, not later, not 10 years from now. but today. So that's really great to have all of you join us and express all of your different viewpoints. One of the things that we also heard is that the loss of federal funding is impacting the progress that many of you are making and want to make to bring these cleaner technologies to California and to the rest of the United States. Despite that, the one thing that remains is that California is committed and remains committed and will be committed to bringing these technologies through all of the different mechanisms that we have at our disposal, including all the things we've been talking about in the Drive Forward initiative. So it's inspiring. It's great to hear everything that's happening and that we can continue to do by working together. And finally, I just want to send a shout out to the team. We have an amazing team here at CARB, especially, of course, I'm a biased source here, but in the program that we oversee, I want to send a special thanks to Nathan Dean and to Amrit and to Evan for their help today. And finally, of course, we couldn't have done this without you, Peter, being the moderator and doing such a great job handling all the comments that we got today. So just really appreciate everybody's participation. We're not there yet. We've still got a little ways to go, but please continue to work with us. We're interested in collecting additional feedback, and we'll see you at the June board meeting. So thanks again, everybody, and I will turn it over to Evan to close us out.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I did want to just reiterate that going back to the slide on the next steps, basically, obviously we're available to contact. You've got all of our contact info, but we will be releasing our proposed funding plan, I believe, on May 15th, providing the necessary public comment period for the June board meeting. So keep that in mind. We're always willing to, accept feedback and comments until then. But yeah, just to echo what Peter had mentioned, really appreciate everyone's time today, taking time out of their schedule to join us and comment. So with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn today's meeting. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.